Okay, all right, everyone. Thanks for being here. Wow, that was a loud noise.
We needed AI to work out the seating.
Exactly. So let's just start off, simply with tell us about your agency, who you are, your agency, what you specialize in, and then who your auto clients are, or what your automotive experience is. Go down the line.
Hello, everybody. My name is Farr. I'm the Global Head of Strategy and Research for Commonwealth McCann. Commonwealth McCann is a standalone agency born out of McCann Wool Group, dedicated to Chevrolet. But GM in total is our largest account within McCann Wool Group, and I sit across some of the strategy across 6 or 7 agencies. So GM is an important client of ours, and there really isn't anything that we don't do for them, because we are a standalone. We operate in about 20 different countries, so we are our own network. So and a long-standing partner of GM. In terms of broader experience, I start to look like a really old hack because I started working with Ford. I've worked on Jaguar, Land Rover, Volvo, and I've even did a stint on Toyota for a long period of time. So yeah, it's I have automotive DNA, I think.
All right, great. Thanks, Ash.
Hi, everybody. I'm Neff, Director of Innovation at The Community. We are a creative agency primarily based in Miami, but we have offices in Buenos Aires, London, and New York. And I sit across innovation globally for those 4 agencies. One of our automotive clients that we have right now is BMW, but my experience as a whole, I've come from the production side and former agencies as well, where I worked on a broad suite of car clients: Chevy, Ford, Lexus, Acura, Infiniti, so I think maybe that's, and Toyota. And we did all kinds of different stuff from VR, AR, early days, machine learning, kind of AI for marketing. So we'll get into a little bit of that, but I definitely love to play with a lot of different car brands and experiment with technology. And I think at our agency, we're doing a good job of trying to disrupt normal marketing practices, normal flow, figure out how to inject some of these kind of cool concepts, buzzwords that you guys hear us throw around all the time. We try to land them. We try to practically land them, give you guys a sense of why they make sense, what type of return on investment you may get, and just try to disrupt and do something cool.
Justin.
My timing was terrible there. So hi, everyone. Good to be here. My name is Justin Thomas-Copeland. I'm president of RAPP-NY. I also sit in the global executive team. In terms of what we do, we are a creative digital engagement agency. Some of you may know that as a CRM agency. Essentially, we are a business that's focused on data and using data, high volume, in creative ways to drive engagement. What we do is we've had in the network about 25 years of automotive experience. A couple of our clients today include Toyota and Mercedes. And personally, I started my career, and I won't tell you my age, but 26 years ago, working on the Ford loyalty program. So after being a software engineer, I then went into an agency world and was managing their data and helping them with modeling, doing data extracts, and then sort of got into more loyalty marketing. So I got a lot of automotive DNA as well. So I'm looking forward to this one.
Well, that's good. I'm glad everyone has automotive experience. So we've got a pretty big topic here. How will AI change auto marketing? That's a big topic. So I want to start by having the panelists here talk a little bit about some of the innovations rooted in AI that exist today, that are out there, that consumers are using, that marketers are maybe exploring with. And talk about how these innovations are, first of all, name them, and then start talking about how they might have an impact on marketing in particular. So anyone want to start with that?
I'm going to pick the obvious one that we're going to talk about. So obviously, without machine learning, without AI, there will not be autonomous. So that's top of mind for a lot of people because it's kind of been a disaster in the last couple of weeks, and that's a very unfortunate instance. But you know, it's not going to go away.
Sure. Could you give us a definition of like what's the difference between like just AI and machine learning?
I think the definition of, okay, so I'm not great on definitions, but my interpretation would be machine learning is really where the AI that's been applied starts to become further optimized, and it starts to learn from itself, as opposed to the AI that will take, we were talking about actually outside, it's kind of a cascading, it's cascades, you know, you've got predictive analytics that takes the data sets and then starts to apply some modeling, and then you've got AI that then starts to optimize the modeling to be more efficient, and then machine learning then starts to take on its own course and path.
Yeah.
You are the expert on this.
So. I'd agree with that. I would say that machine learning, the way we talk about these things at RAPP, is machine learning is using computer technology to ingest vast amounts of data, which we do, and from the initial learning, start to learn on its own. Right? We talk about AI as being the ability to use computer technology to start to reason and make informed and smart decisions. And that could be around language, so natural language processing. It could be around imagery, all those types of things that we use in marketing. So we take very ABC sort of definitions to that. For us, one of the big things that we've seen in working with clients is around machine learning. So typically from a marketing perspective, more so than a service layer perspective, but using data and understanding data and predicting the types of marketing that you need has completely and fundamentally changed in what we see. And the race to kind of get to the individual is completely where a lot of our clients are focused. And machine learning is one of the big platforms that we use to enable us to do that. Whereas in the past it would be around, let's kind of look at what the marketing we did and see how we can do it better. Now it's much more around, let's ingest loads of data and let the machine work out what types of marketing we should engage in. It's a very, very different model, and it's a very different value statement.
Right. Well, go ahead.
Well, I think to expand on that, because I think that last point, after the ingestion process and as the machines are essentially learning and kind of rethinking about, you know, maybe their objectives and coming up with new objectives, or thinking about that data a little bit differently, we can think about the way we target and the way we talk to our consumers, right? So bringing it kind of back to like how we then go to market, we may develop different insights or, you know, different out-of-the-box concepts that were derived and something that us as human beings didn't necessarily come up with. Part of that is because of the speed at which they're learning. Part of that is a bit of efficiency, and they just kind of see things maybe the way we don't. But then as humans, we can take some of that conceptual thinking, some of those insights, and apply them in a very micro-targeted way or in a pointed way. So I think that's obviously a really nice place in terms of getting to the go-to-market funnel.
You had two parts to your question.
I did, and you guys didn't answer the
We kind of
question
butchered
the way
your
that
question,
I asked you
but
to. But
hopefully
that's okay. That's okay. We're good.
We could go back to it. I mean,
No. Well, what I wanted to start off by talking about before we got to the marketing applications was more stuff like, you know, connected cars, self-driving cars. We've talked a little bit about that stuff today. I wanted to kind of drill down into that. But then also voice, VR, AR, you know, all that kind of stuff. So, and then move into the sort of marketing aspects, you know.
Well, let's talk about.
We're good.
Should we talk about the smart assistants? Should we
yeah, let's do it. I mean, since we just had a chatbot presentation, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's definitely in terms of autonomous. Like, you know, obviously you have a vehicle now that somebody is going to be in, right? They're going to be in this vehicle. They're going to be going for a ride, whether they're you know, buying the car, going for a ride in the car, and that assistant, that ability to kind of talk to that person in a deeper way, which gets back to natural language processing, I think, in many ways. So I think it's part computer vision and part natural language processing, natural language response, but how a smart assistant can go beyond just a scripted, much like you see with Alexa or with Home, a scripted response. There's an input, there's an output. If this, then that, right? How do we go deeper so that it's an actual conversation, and it's a conversation based on what you know, what it knows about you, and in that kind of ride, you're then connected to that car in a deeper way. So I think that part of this, it already exists, but I think it's still very early days in transactional I'm excited to see it innovate further.
So you're seeing a future where Alexa drives your autonomous vehicle for you. So is that kind of what you're saying?
Alexa will be in
someone like
autonomous vehicles as a smart assistant, and that's already, I think, been integrated. I'm going to think with a couple different cars, to be honest. But the ability just to understand you in a deeper manner, and the ability to process how to respond to you beyond just scripted responses, like chatbots, like we see in everyday IoT right now, and voice response. It's pulling from a data set that exists versus coming up with its own way of responding to you.
Right, which is the difference between machine learning and what's
natural language processing.
Okay.
But so I think that you're going to see it manifest itself in driver's aids. Like 97% of all accidents are down to human error. So that applying that kind of machine learning to driver's aids, we're talking about connected cars. I think in the next 2 years there's going to be 250 million connected cars. So an autonomous is just further down that path. But a lot of what we're talking about is kind of here. There's just degrees of autonomous, really. And I think also as a little bit of an outlier or an unintended consequence of this kind of technology is that you're going to see things like the insurance business kind of turn on its head, because it's a probability-based industry, and through AI, you're going to have literally the intelligence based on your behavior. And so you won't have those, it's a $25 billion industry that's going to have to re-examine its business models.
Yeah, so your behaviors. Also, we work with an insurance company, and one of the things that we've helped them to do is rethink, and we're starting to help them to rethink how they have to go to market differently and think differently. You look at Lemonade.com, so an AI-based insurance company, and the whole service layer is different. Their intelligence, how they calculate premiums, even how they deal with you as customers. And part of the broadening ecosystem that we see when we work with automotive manufacturers is how do you start to create bridges? So how do you have service layers that are going beyond just the car experience, but are really bringing in that merged data sets of insurance and understanding your habits, so you can get the best price points, you can get the best service extensions, products extensions, and that's where we are, from an engagement perspective, looking at going as well. So there's big bridges that we're trying to start to walk across.
And that's not necessarily a marketing application, more of a business application.
Service layers, business models, business drivers. It's a whole
is that where we're going to see the innovation first before it kind of seeps into marketing more? I mean, I know there's innovations in marketing happening too, but
I don't know if it's going to be first, but I think you're going to see a lot of partnering in those areas where the data and understanding how people are driving their habits, that actually affects how you can stimulate business models and drive revenues, and how you can get automotives, manufacturers coming together with insurers and bringing together new products, new services, new activations. I think those are things that we'll be looking at.
It's one of the questions that we talked about, that what's coming first and which areas are being impacted. Working with a company like General Motors, it's I can't think of a single division that doesn't have an AI project that they're exploring. So it's pervasive already. In fact, I came into New York this week. I'm based out of Detroit, and I think my schedule in the last 48 hours, I would say 40% of the conversations that I have had in the last 48 hours have been based on AI something and touching many different parts of the organization. Beyond, well, I mean, again, it's kind of, what's the definition of marketing if we're going to get into defining it these days, so.
So are you sick of it?
No, I'm actually not. I'm really excited, because I think that if you've worked in tech for a long period of time, and I've been around it for a long time, we've sort of been promised this. This has been sort of a little bit of the holy grail for a very long time, and you actually get the sense that. I was having a discussion yesterday with regards to AI and biometrics responses to just something as simple as a test drive. But you're actually starting to see this come to life, and these things are actually possible, and it's actually very exciting. as a marketing person that that we can actually, what we can imagine, we can actually start to do. So I'm not bored of it at all. I'm playing catch up, but it feels, we were talking about it outside, as though we have a number of different partnerships with different companies, and we did some AI work based around how you even just shoot cars. People don't really understand it. It's actually really difficult if your car's not made to go and shoot it, and then you have to kind of do it in the middle of the night. Someone takes a photo of it, all sorts of stuff. So we work with a company called The Mill on something called the Blackbird, if you're aware of it. The technology that since that was released has changed dramatically. So now we've got the ability to do real-time processing, rendering, and that's all AI-based. So
you've had the opportunity to kind of watch it grow a bit, the machine learning aspects, is what you're saying?
Yeah, I could do some machine learning myself just to keep up with it.
Right on. Let's see. How can AI, ML, and other aspects that we just named kind of? We've talked about what have we talked about? We've talked about machine learning, obviously. We've talked about natural language processing, predictive analytics. Have we mentioned neural networks yet? Is that one that we need to throw out there for people so they know what that is? Because I don't know what that is, actually. I mean, I've heard people tell me that they are selling that or whatever.
It's relevant, but it's just, I mean, it's essentially an artificial brain, right? So it's nodes instead of neurons. We have neurons in our brain. These are nodes. They're interconnected. So the thing to think about with a neural network, because if you hear it thrown around, it's the connection of all of this data, right? These groups of nodes. You can have a crazy amount of these nodes. I want to say, like, you know, that's the larger the data set grows, the greater you connect it. But it's the connective tissue that that matters. And I would like to think that a neural network, or the thought of a neural network, is how you kind of evolve AI beyond where it is today, and you actually allow it to potentially think beyond its primary objective, right? If its primary objective is to just, you know, learn as much as possible, or if its primary objective is to identify cats in GIFs, it's going to be good at doing that. But when can it start to think outside of its objective? When can it think about other objectives? And as it starts to do that, I think the thought of a neural network, which is more of a biological thing, right? We have a neural network. So when you think about the biology of it and you think about the science, like, it's probably the key for that AI to kind of evolve beyond its primary objective and become more, you know, whatever we want to call it. It's not necessarily being more human, but it's definitely going to take things, more general AI, yeah.
All right, well, call me crazy, but that kind of scares me a little bit. I mean, is everyone comfortable with that? I don't know. Anyone?
No, nobody.
I mean,
anybody want to raise their hand?
Consciousness for robots? I don't know that. I don't know. There's been a lot of movies and stuff. I don't know.
It still comes back down to what you're doing with, you know, an individual's data, and obviously it's a hot topic this week. Facebook's having a bit of a rough time. So yeah, we should be concerned, and it's not necessarily in a Terminator sort of way, but just, you know, what access do people have to. Because again, it's no longer a profile. It's no longer, you really are getting into your specific behavior. And then, so I think, you know, I think we're going to see a lot. I think the world will go a lot more of the way of Europe in terms of data protection for those very reasons.
Okay. All right. So let's get to the mark. Oh, did someone?
I just wanted to say one more thing. I mean, I think that we're afraid of it because we assume that when it starts to invent new objectives, it's going to invent the wrong objectives, negative objectives, do things that, but I was having this conversation yesterday, and I think there's a good counterpoint. Like, our assumption that just machines are going to create, you know, negative objectives, deadly objectives, whatever, that's our assumption. Like, just because you ask a machine to learn, it can become all-knowing. Why does it have to deviate and do something bad with that information? It's essentially just growing and growing in terms of what it knows. So I think there's a good counterpoint to it, and that's the two sides of the equation. Yes, I believe in regulation because it keeps it contained, but we can't assume that the objective that it now learns and the deviation is going to be Terminator, right? So we have to think about?
I think the consideration set, though, for clients, from what I hear, is without knowing the answer to that question, there's a big risk factor, right? So, if we can't guarantee it as their primary partners, then do we leave it alone until we can, until we get some form of management or hands around how we can manage how algorithms are going to work, which are inherently human as well. People forget algorithms themselves, when you write them, they're inherently human things. So they do have a bias. So it's a big question.
So how about some marketing applications for this stuff today? Anyone got? I mean, we've talked about like internally a little bit inside your organization and whatnot, but actual marketing communications. What are we seeing, and what examples do we have?
Well, I think that one of the challenges for all OEMs is value add. Mm-hmm. You know, again, it's a little bit of an arms race, but it's also a little bit of an arms race to monetize the data. You know, people are prepared to pay for connectivity. They're prepared to pay for services. You know, I went back to that stat. If there's 250 million connected cars, and you have, you know, sort of fourth stage, fifth stage autonomous, then you're going to have very powerful captive audience to be able to monetize that and to do something with your time. So I think that that's going to be sort of the biggest opportunity. But it also means that there is a race to build utility and value and products that people really respond and appreciate, and maybe take with them, you know, when they're no longer, you know, with the car. So it's expansive, and again, I don't know that anyone's sort of got it yet right, but it's a big challenge because there's limited margin, and you've got to find ways of monetizing this data.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, and I'm not the expert to talk about the data or the use of the data, but in terms of applying artificial intelligence, machine learning to marketing practices, I've had more success with image recognition, like computer vision, just the ability for a machine to be able to identify that's a chair, that's a table, that's a floor, you know, that's this product, that's that product. That's more pointed, and I find to be more successful. So how you apply that, we've applied that in the past using mobile phone detection, where you're able to kind of look around using the camera, using what would be considered augmented reality to understand objects and then feed information back to the user about what they're receiving. We've done some of that stuff in dealership, and we did something with T-Mobile that was a little bit more fun about understanding your reactions to be able to feed back and kind of give the user a sense of, you know, recognition, emotional recognition, and things like that. So where I would say in terms of the application, like, be careful with trying to invent, you know, the copywriter, the strategist, the person who's essentially going to come up with language for you to use and bypass the humans. I don't think we are there yet. I think we are leaps and bounds from being there. Chatbots are more programmatic. I think you hit a good point in terms of human and algorithmic, and there's more of an if this than that. Be a little careful when with natural language processing, just because I think there's the biggest risk probably in that element of AI. We've cracked some things, but I definitely will say there's a lot of pivoting, a lot of holes, and you might not be thrilled with what you get. So I would keep open-minded there.
So I've read a lot about this stuff without totally understanding it, but I don't know. Some people say that the future of this stuff is fewer jobs for humans. Some people say actually it's going to create many more jobs. Where do you fall on that?
So I'll start this if that's okay. So one of the things that we do is we build AI-driven marketing automation as one of our product sets. And we're doing that not because we're scared of automation, but actually a lot of what we did in our sort of CRM heritage days is now automated. So we decided to jump in the boat. That didn't mean that we sort of let go of a lot of our people. We didn't do that. What we did was we were able to go back to the client and look at reinvestment, right? And to talk to the client about more strategic help in terms of their business models, in terms of their partner ecosystem, and a lot of the more functional marketing that we were doing for them. There's a lot of functional marketing in automotive marketing. whether it was email campaigns, whether it was online advertising, those things we put through an automated platform, which was infused with machine learning and also AI capabilities. So we could predict campaigns before we went to market. We could look at what we thought would be the response versus what the machine was telling us would be the response, so we could start to make sensible marketing decisions. But the savings, if you will, of people was put towards more strategic partnering. So it was really just about having a better fit of our services. So we're not scared. I think you've got to embrace it. I think you've got to embrace it, and you've got to start to challenge yourself to think differently about how marketing works.
And it's no different from, you know, 1995 when digital was just a, you know, no one had those skill sets. A few people did. So yeah, we have to learn new skill sets, but that's exciting. It creates employment, creates opportunity. It's just it's not a strong. We don't have a strong muscle memory in it. But it's also, you know, it's for agencies. It's critical because it's the value add that we're bringing, demonstrating to our clients the value that we can bring. And, you know, but it'll just only be time before those skill sets are in-house, and, you know, what is the exception becomes the norm.
Yeah, if I may, sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I wouldn't be afraid to start. I think that the key here is that, you know, we can all use machine learning, we can all use AI in some way, but it doesn't have to be a huge objective that we're trying to achieve. Like, maybe you're trying to figure out how to be more efficient with an aspect of your business. Maybe you're trying to solve a problem, garner different insights. You need an objective that you can apply machine learning to give you a different perspective. And there's so many tools right now that are being, you know, thrown our way every day, where it's essentially like machine learning, TensorFlow for non-developers. People that can't code can do machine learning, and that's something that Google brought recently. So it's like, I think what I would say is, like, you have to start, and I agree that it's early days. The skill sets aren't there. It's definitely a specialty world, but, like, you just have to experiment and try. And you're gonna be happy, or you're gonna at least learn kind of what this crazy world is that we're all talking about.
So, so you would advise clients to kind of start small, I guess, right? So, what does that mean? Can give me an example of what does start small mean for an automotive client in particular? So,
I mean, I can give you an example of, to me, something we're doing right now that is pretty small. It could ultimately be monumental. We'll see. We're using cameras. I live in Miami. We're based in Miami. So in downtown Miami, there's a big problem with bridges. When you're driving, you get stuck for a bridge, and all of a sudden 10 minutes gets added to your commute, and you had no warning. Waze doesn't know it, Google doesn't know it, Uber, Lyft, everybody doesn't know this. So why is that? And we, as the consumer, has to suffer for that. And granted, it's 10 minutes, it's not the end of the world, but if we're in a hurry, of course, we're not gonna be happy with it. So on key balconies around Miami, we're studying the bridges and the patterns of the bridges to understand the interrelationship. So when one bridge goes up, what happens to the next bridge? What happens to the next bridge? And so on, so that we can understand predictive analysis and ideally, eventually, get this actually integrated into a navigation system so that we can use machine learning for that purpose. But we're not there yet. We're simply using Nest cameras on balconies, which is very simple and a pretty easy to understand front-end interface that tells you, a website that tells you what the status of the bridges are and when they may go up. So very small, it's an internal project, but we're obviously gonna make it bigger here shortly, but that's starting small. Like, we saw a problem that we had in our city, we applied machine learning, and now we're looking at the results.
One of the things I would advise is that to dip your toe and go and talk to people. I mean, and when I say my agenda is, 40% is based on AI, it's largely going and talking to people. We have a relationship with an incubator business here in New York, and we're talking to companies that are focused on the connected city. And again, part of Mary Barra's objective of 000, we're just exploring. We're talking, we're playing with a few things. We are attempting to a little bit of innovation ourselves. Business is tough. If you're an OEM, you're very much focused on the day-to-day. but my advice is carve out a little bit of time with your partners and set a team aside to go and explore and go and listen to a lot of people and go and I guess play a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Just do we need to go to questions, Tanya? Is that what you're standing? In a minute or two, okay. But thinking about like connected cars, I've kind of heard anecdotally because I actually don't follow automotive as closely as people like Tanya do at MediaPost. So this might be more of a question, I don't know, for me. But some auto OEMs I know collect data inside their cars and are really wanting to control the first-party data. Others kind of outsource the collection of that. Right? Is that right? It is right? Sort of.
Yeah, you have a mixed model.
What do you advise, given that like we expect all this from AI, I mean, how would you advise them in terms of that? I mean, is that a good or a bad decision? I mean, I don't want to say it like that, but I guess it depends on the brand, I suppose. But
well, I think there's a different consciousness about data and who owns the data.
Yeah, who owns the data?
So I don't even know if it's about our advice to the OEMs, to our clients. Mm-hmm. I think consumers more and more are going to really decide sort of where their data goes and who owns that. So I think that's the dynamic that we're going to be dealing with. I think things like GDPR, which come into effect on the 25th of May. I know a lot of...
Tell us about it.
Well, it's a European thing. I hear that a lot, but actually it's a global... If you're a globally operating, functioning company, you have to understand GDPR. It doesn't matter that you may be in North America, for example. So I think things like that are going to really raise the consciousness. Things like Facebook and what's happening at the moment, I mean, these are real things where I think ultimately the consumer will decide who owns the data. I don't think the long-term strategy is going to be about OEMs trying to decide on that. I think it's about how they are open, have open systems, and they allow consumers to really understand how their data is being used and focus on driving value from the data.
I was going to say, it's a value equation.
Focus on the value.
If there's something that, if there is that utility, if there is that value, if that connected car is meaning that I don't have to, wait, or I can avoid a problem with a bridge, or if my Starbucks is ready for me as I pull up, then I'm okay with some of that transaction, as long as there's a degree of transparency. And I think that's what we're kind of seeing at the moment, is that we inherently kind of feel a little bit duped at the moment. So it's not necessarily the problem that that data is being used, but I didn't know how it was being used, and I certainly didn't know the purposes that it was being sold for. So those sorts of things are going to be really super important. And I think what we're going through now is our own kind of predictive analytics. We're at the start of this. In 5-10 years' time, it will just be the norm. Right now, we're just kind of finding our feet, but I think that it's going to have a demonstrable, impact upon all of our businesses.
Okay, great. So Tanya, any questions from the audience?
Well, I have a question, actually.
You do, okay.
Given what happened with Uber in Phoenix, and now, I don't know if you've heard, they just announced they're not going to renew their license in California. How do you get, say if Chevrolet were marketing an autonomous vehicle, how do you get around that fear that people are inevitably going to have?
I'm happy to opine.
And I'll for all of you, I just mentioned Chevy because you're, Chevy.
Started, you're Chevy.
Well, I think, I think the simple answer is it's not easy. They're real fears. So I think the path is to walk slowly, and it's, I guess, maybe I accept my own bias here, but it's the difference between a car manufacturer and a tech company. You don't get to reboot your app and say sorry. So that's, it's probably, there's a reason why Chevrolet is taking a very, they're putting incredible amounts of investment behind it, but walking before, without trying to run.
Well, GM in general, because Cadillac already has the Super Cruise, which is, as close to autonomous as you can get in a GM vehicle at the moment.
And in a, for sure, so, and it's incredibly robust, and I think that's what all of these, all of us have to start thinking about you know, it doesn't take a lot to change the enthusiasm and confidence that either the market has or consumers, you know, are excited about this possibility.
Yeah, if I can add one thing, I mean, the amount of lives that could be saved with car accidents, the amount of lives that could be saved if autonomous vehicles go right, which is the long game, is substantial, right? So there's going to be very unfortunate circumstances, and with innovation, I think in general, there's always unfortunate casualties. There's always things that go wrong. We've seen it in you know, the space race. We've seen it in aviation. We've seen it in military testing. It's unfortunately just a part of life as we're trying to innovate and find an edge. And I think that, to me, it's like, does the end justify the means? And I do think it's I saw that, you know, Arizona obviously pulled out. I know that Ford and Domino's are going to start a program in Miami, which I'm excited to see, the autonomous fleet in Miami, because if it could survive that, it can survive anywhere. But I do think we all just have to push forward and be you know, conscious of obviously the it's really tough, and it's you know, that is a sad casualty, and I just feel like the end here. I look forward to the day maybe where I don't have to worry about my kids driving when they're able to drive and they're able to ride in an autonomous vehicle. Like, that's the future that I want, and I don't quite know how we get there, but I'm excited to see how we get there.
I would just add something really simple, which is that I think there are two things, right, that we think we should advocate for. One is openness. I think it's a moment for pause, for dialogue, for openness. And the second is around accountability, right? So where does the accountability lie? And is there an understanding of that accountability? So we can say innovation does always have the effects and, you know, and some downsides, but I think we have to be clear where the accountability is. You know, I'm a father of 3 children. You're going to be accountable if anything goes wrong, right? So I think dialogue and discussion around that, I think this is a good moment for that. That will help brands to know how to go to market, and that will help brands to know how to be have the rightful place in society. If it's driverless cars, that's fine, but I think we need to have an openness and accountability that goes behind it. So I hope there's a moment of pause around that.
Cool, thanks. My name is Christopher Vegas with the Mobi. So yesterday I was talking with a couple of different automotive executives, and we were talking about artificial intelligence and autonomous vehicles and et cetera. And specifically this case in Arizona came up. And the opinion of the folks that I was engaged with yesterday was essentially that with artificial intelligence, unfortunately, in order for this technology to be rolled out into autonomous vehicles, there is going to be human casualties. I mean, it's going to have to happen. The risk of it happening is high probability, as we've seen in Arizona, because the artificial intelligence needs to learn. The only way for it to be able to learn and adapt is to be on the road and experience these human situations that are the infinite number of variables. I just wanted to know, do you folks also share that same opinion? I see your head shaking, so.
I think it's a fantastic point. Yeah, I mean, it is about machine learning. It is about the evolution, and we have to get out there and we have to try. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And then the second part that they also shared, which I thought was really kind of like interesting because I didn't even think about it, was the fact that one of the other forces that is going to drive autonomous vehicles is the fact that consumers are going to be able to then monetize their own vehicles. I mean, imagine you're sitting here right now. You can, like, on your phone, tell your vehicle to go drive around and pick up some Uber routes for you, right, while you're sitting here at work. Right? So, so there's a lot of different forces that are at play that are going to drive the innovation around autonomous vehicles. And I just wanted to share that point of view with you or see if you had any other things to add.
I think we're going to see multiple different business models evolve as a result of that. So whether or not your Airbnb your car is kind of one potential for sure. But I think it is going to change the structure of car ownership, full stop. So, you know, and there are a lot of lessons that people are learning. Is that one of the problems with that is that your car wears out at about, you know, 9 times faster than it does currently. So it's a fascinating time, and I don't know. I certainly don't feel equipped to make that moral judgment of, because the question is that, so the question that naturally comes from that is how many lives are okay then to lose, and I don't know how we address that. So for me, if I were in the position to make those decisions, I'd be wanting to find ways that it can learn, perhaps through other different devices, throughout other different modalities, to then such a point that we can get to where the risk is as limited as possible.
I just want to clarify one thing. Every single life is extremely valuable, but I think the argument that they made, which made sense, was the fact that if you look at the casualties that occur on the road today, over 330,000 deaths as a result of automotive accidents, that the value of artificial intelligence and the safety and convenience that it can bring consumers, that the risk doesn't outweigh the value that it's going to bring society.
Without a doubt. There are 1.8 million deaths of teens just because they think that they can tweet and drive at the same time. So, you know, we can be monumentally stupid as humans at times. So
I'm getting the hook, guys. I'm getting the hook, unfortunately, for this panel. But hey, you guys, this was really interesting. Thank you very, very much, Justin, Chris, and Ash. If you have any more questions for these guys, maybe during a later coffee break or something, you can talk about it. But we have to wrap for this one.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much. Thank you.